Good morning and welcome to NASA headquarters. We're excited to have with us here today 7 astronauts from the Apollo program. They're here to help us commemorate the historic first lunar landing 40 years ago today. Joining us here, and this is the order they first flew on Apollo, is Walt Cunningham with Apollo 7, James Lovell with Apollo 8 and Apollo 13, David Scott with Apollo 9 and Apollo 15, Buzz Aldrin, Apollo 11, Charles Duke, Apollo 16, Thomas Stafford, Apollo 10, and Eugene Cernan, Apollo 10 and Apollo 17. The Apollo astronauts will begin. I think actually Jim Lovell is going to begin with an opening statement, and then we'll take Q&A here at NASA headquarters, followed by our NASA field centers. Jim?
John, thank you. I think that today we ought to look at July 20th and the celebration of the landing of Apollo 11, and really the complete context of what we're doing here. This is not just to celebrate the flight of the last 60 miles of the Apollo 11 crew to the landing. Certainly we all honor the Apollo 11 crew and the people that provided their support. In reality, this is a national celebration of the completion of something that President Kennedy suggested and committed to 9 years before the landing of Apollo 11. And we have to really celebrate in a national scope the flights of Mercury, the original pioneers and what they did there. The flights of Gemini that did all the work that and all the processes and the rendezvous and the EVAs and the long distance flights that made the final landing on the moon possible. And then we have to look at some of the early Apollo flights that finally led the way all the way to the moon, that made this final 11 landing really a national celebration and something that we can all be proud of. So in aspects of all the Apollo celebrations we've had this year, we've had 7 and 10 and 8. This is really a national celebration. This is really a celebration for all those people that helped Neil and Buzz and Mike make that final 60 miles travel to the surface of the moon. And so we're all here to celebrate this day on really a national scope of a great project in a bold move and well conceived and a final completion.
Okay, thank you. We'll start taking questions here. Any other opening remarks from anyone? Okay, we'll start taking questions here at NASA headquarters, followed by our field centers. Remember to wait for the microphone, state your full name and affiliation, and who your question is directed to. Questions? I want to start over here on the left side.
Working? Good morning. Tom Fitzgerald from Fox Television, WTTG here in Washington. Mr. Aldrin, if I could ask you, we'll start with you since this is the anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing. So many people talk about where they thought the United States and the space program would be by now. Looking back on this day 40 years ago, where did you think we would be by now? And where do you see us moving forward from this point in 2009?
I think we were all caught up with the task at hand to give a whole lot of thought to where this really would fit into the future. I would call it being naive, maybe, in comparison to where I think I, as an individual, stand today, looking at the past and looking at the future. Clearly, the commitment to land on the moon was absolutely pioneering, uncharted technology. And we achieved that and flushed with success. 6 out of 7 successful landings. About the odds that we thought our mission was that we would be able to land and come back. 95%, I guess, we felt of coming back alive. So I think where we are today is quite a bit different. With the success that we had with Apollo, and when we chose to terminate that because of a fading interest in wondrous things being done on the last missions that Gene was involved in, just tremendous achievements, but it was not really stimulating the ongoing interest of the people. We had Southeast Asia problems going on with good friends of us. All of us probably would have been over there dropping bombs, shooting down MiGs or something, had it not been for the space program. We had those things to solve. We had a sort of a new uprising of questioning authority with a youth, maybe stimulated by not liking the authorities' decisions, and maybe a few of them going to Canada or whatever. There was clearly a flower in the end of a rifle. There was an opposition to what the government was doing. With the success that we had with Apollo, I think perhaps we felt we could do much more by catching up what we had left behind, and that is reusable spacecraft going to low Earth orbit to a laboratory that would begin to do all sorts of wondrous things in low Earth orbit. Well, unfortunately, neither of those quite lived up to the marketing expectations that we put on them. And now we're still attempting to begin to terminate those activities. And I think we're getting back to what NASA and what the country really likes to see, and that's exploration. To me, exploration is going to someplace you haven't been before. I'm sure I'll get into that a little later.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Jeff Kluger, Time Magazine. I'm wondering if any of you guys want to comment on the likely recommendations of the Augustine Commission when it releases its guidelines or its suggestions in August. Do you feel NASA is on the right track now for return to the moon? Do you think there should be a modification of the plans for the boosters being used? And is the timetable generally correct, or do we need a little more time to fly the shuttle before we put that away?
Jeff, I've talked to you on the phone, but I can't see. Where are you? Can you raise your hand?
Back there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Tom.
You know, back in 1989, President Bush, 41, President Bush Sr., the 20th anniversary of the first lunar landing, said NASA, you know, after completing the space station, should set its sight after the turn of the century, returning to the moon, so this time to stay, and then eventually an expedition potentially to Mars, and started, you know, that idea. And then there was several things put forth by NASA that then the reactivated Space Council disagreed with, and then I got asked to volunteer to head a task force, which I did for about a year voluntarily. It had 2 floors over here in Crystal City, and put together all the ideas from the Department of Defense, NASA, Department of Energy, academia, ideas from around America, all the aerospace industrial firms, and it's called America at the Threshold. And we have showed the basic technology priorities and the different options of architectures. And what they have today in Constellation is somewhat of a modification of one of those, but today the Augustine Commission and President Obama has asked him to review it. And Norm Augustine asked me to be the first one to make a presentation, and told him, you know, that here are the options, and really about the only one you could look at is architecture 1. We won't go into that, but they're looking at the options, and from that they'll make recommendations that here is a series of options what we should do. But you know, the nature of NASA, Buzz has outlined it, is to explore and go ahead. Now, everybody can have their own little design, but we have a new administrator now, some good people on board, and let's have them look at the options and decide what is reasonable to go forward to have this country explore again.
Jeff, Walter Cunningham, nice crowd. Thank you all for being here. the first question that was asked, I don't think there was a soul in the astronaut office back in the 1960s that wouldn't have thought we would have been on the moon by the year 2000. Mars. Excuse me, Mars. It's a big mistake. But that's the way we thought about it in those days. But when you ask about the Augustine Commission, I don't think there's anyone that's better qualified than NASA to evaluate the various options. But it may all be very academic because it's not, in this era, unless it has the funding to do it, it doesn't make any difference which option they take, and that seems to be probably the most critical point. Until we were willing to pay the price, the American public is not going to have a very aggressive space program again.
Thank you. Tracy Watson.
Yeah, Tracy Watson with USA Today. For Mr. Cernan and Mr. Duke, I think, since you've had a good stretch of time on the moon, what advice would you offer NASA about sending astronauts back for longer missions? What are the big considerations in your mind about making that stay there, productive and reasonably comfortable? Thanks.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Gene.
You'll find out most of us have a lot of advice for NASA at this point in time. I have a lot of advice for the administration, too, which you may not want to hear about. But I think so goes the administration, so goes America, so goes the space program. And I'd like to think, as I look back, it's a nostalgic time. We all look back, I think, for the purpose of realizing what we've done right, what we've done wrong, and where we can go into the future. And if you think about it, from the first steps of Down the Shepherd to the final steps on the moon, the space program sort of mirrors the last 230 years of this country. Think about it. We had to accept challenges. We had to be bold. We had to take risks. We had to make sacrifices. And think about that. And in a sense, it's a encapsulation of 230 years of what America is all about. We can recapture that kind of spirit in America. We can recapture the spirit of the space program. And the greatest legacy I think we have from Apollo is the inspiration it provided for those young dreamers who follow in our footsteps. So we can live and stay on the moon as long as we want to. Charlie and I were there for 3 days. I mean, we both, I'm sure, would rather have been there for 3 weeks. We didn't have the capability nor the time. But we need to go back to the moon. We need to learn a little bit more about what we think we know already. We need to establish bases, put new telescopes on the moon, get prepared to go to Mars, because the ultimate goal truly is to go to Mars. And, you know, someone asked a question earlier about where we thought we were going. I was the last guy on the moon. And when I came back, I got on my soapbox, and, you know, everyone said, how's it feel to be the tail of the dog? How's it feel to be the last one over the fence? The end. And I kept saying, it's not the end, it's the beginning. And I really believed that we'd be back to the moon by the end of that decade and on our way to Mars by the turn of the century. My glass has been half empty for 3 decades, at least. And, but hopefully we can turn that around, because what we did then is doable again. And I think the next major goal is not to spend 3 days just on the moon, or 3 weeks, or 3 months on the moon, but to sit here, have you folks or your kids or grandkids sit here and talk to a group of guys that can tell you what it was like to go to Mars.
I think, let me answer that operationally. 2 week stay or 3 week stay of what on the moon is a challenge for the systems that we have today. We need to develop a better spacesuit, more tactile feeling, easier motion. Lunar dust, I think, is going to be a real problem for a long duration. So we're should look at concepts of airlocks where we leave the dust outside, if you will, of the habitation module. So there are a lot of things like that that we need to look at and to develop, and that work is going on. I participated in back in December, a few of us did a lunar suit symposium. Jack Schmitt, Apollo 17, chaired that. We're looking at some of the new architectures. And so the operational problems, we're going to solve those.
and we're trying to give our experience to those decisions to help them make the right decisions. I think we can do it, and I think the human spirit's going to return us to the moon, and then build on that, and on we go to Mars eventually.
Those things we need to do for long duration flight, for protection, and all that, why go to the most difficult place, the surface of the moon, to do those? Why not do those at the space station? Prolong the life of the space station, make the internationals happy, develop an exploration module that will last a year, 2 years, and 3 years, something that can be adapted to land on asteroids, land on Phobos, and eventually, because it's designed initially to land on Mars instead of the moon, we've got a pathway that doesn't require us to expend our resources that are precious right now. We put $100 billion into the space station, and that's enormous in comparison to what the other nations do. Do we want to put $200 billion into permanence on the moon, or 6 months on the moon? Why? We can help other people with all these studies we talked about. The dust on the moon is different than the dust on Mars. It's different from the dust here because there's no water, no air up there, and so it's fractured. It's sharp pieces of dust. And that's not going to be the way it is on Mars.
Thank you. Question down here.
Randy Shostak with EOS, the newspaper of the American Geophysical Union. Not to mince words, then President Nixon told the Apollo 11 astronauts when you came back, quote, "This is the greatest week in the history of the world since the creation." I'd like comments and perspective from Mr. Aldrin and others, please.
Well, it was 8 days, and it was certainly a great 8 days. We didn't start with "Let there be light" and then end up with at the end of the week set aside Sundays for reflection. I don't know what the greatest week in history is, but it was certainly a pioneering, opening the door. With the door open when we touched down on the moon, because that is what enabled humans to put many, many more footprints on the surface of the moon. Landing on another object is what will enable us to put many other things, determine many other things with humans being there, inspiring other people. America to Mars is what ought to be, not America back to the moon. America can use our experience, great experience, and the last 4 years of experience in detailed preparation for us to go. We can share that with somebody else. Let's do that. Let's expend our resources in these precious times when we have to conserve things right now. Now is a starting point when we need to look at the economic way to get started.
Let me comment a little bit if I can. Thank you. We have, again, to look at what we want to do with our space activities. What do we want to accomplish? Now, if you talk to the scientists, we barely did anything with the moon. They would love to have the last of the Apollo flights continue, 18, 19, and 20, because we've just stepped on the moon. We spent at the most 3 days there. So if you talk to the scientific community, there's a lot still to be done on the moon, which is just 240,000 miles away. Now, if you want to look at a national project, one that brings prestige and something that you can be proud of, and it really a consortium of countries, then we want to go to Mars. And as Buzz says, there's a lot we can do with the International Space Station because we spent a lot of money up there for almost nothing. It's almost a white elephant. And until we can really get a return on our investment of that particular project, then it was money wasted. So you have to look at what the priorities of our space activities are. Go back to the moon, expand the space station to look back at the Earth, go on to Mars, which is a grand project, which will probably be accumulation of many of the countries, and probably by that time China, after feeling that they are very confident in space, will join us. Then that is a project that will bring the Earth closer together, all the countries working on a project that has a common goal.
I guess we all have an opinion on what we should do next, and it's a great debate. I always find it quite stimulating. But I'd like to emphasize a couple of points. Going to the moon, exploring the moon is very, very difficult. It's not easy. Sometimes we made it look easy because the television was terrific. Jack Schmitt bouncing across the moon saying in Merry Month of May. Wasn't easy, it was difficult. Going to Mars is about a factor of 10 more difficult. We know how to do it, we could land, but the duration of the flight, almost 3 years, puts us in a situation where we need new technology and new capabilities to go to Mars. At the same time, going to Mars over that long period of time is very expensive. Costs about $2 jillion or whatever. And in a democratic society, we have to have a reason to sustain a high level of funding for a long period of time. We live in a democratic society, fortunately, but we have to find a reason to go to Mars that will continue the funding. And I sort of like to step back and look at it. I believe in exploration. I was really lucky. I was part of this great group of guys and the other 400,000 people who made it happen. But you know, it's sort of like Columbus just returned, and the world isn't flat after all. But Cabot and Magellan haven't been born yet, and the Pilgrims aren't even on the drawing board. So I think we're at the beginning of a long, long phase of exploration into the planets, and I think we will go to Mars. We'll have to take it a step at a time, and I would challenge everybody to think about what's the reason to go? How can we stimulate the public and stimulate Congress to fund it in the long term? But I'm sure we'll do it, and I look forward to seeing the young people who are learning today go do it for us.
What percentage of the national budget is a jillion?
No, Joe, no, I said 2 jillion.
All right, twice as much. What percentage? I mean, we got 0.5% right now. We'll keep going at 0.5% until we get out of this recession. You don't have to make the investment to go to Mars right now.
The investment that we made back in the 1960s was paying back. You got the return on the investment for the next 30 years. It was a driver of technology that really helped make us the leading driving economic force in the world. What are we doing today? What investment are we making today that will ensure that we have that kind of return for the next 30 years? I don't see it out there. Somebody ought to be educating right here in Washington, D.C., what is the difference between an investment and an expenditure. The 1960s, we invested 4% of the federal budget, up to 4% in the federal budget, someplace where it was going to make a return. We now seem to think it's too much to put even 0.6% into the NASA budget. That is idiotic, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a question down here.
From Mr. Aldrin, since this is the 40th anniversary, can you take us back to the moment when you're leaving the orbiter, you and Neil Armstrong, what you were thinking, what you were feeling, were you afraid, did you look at each other? Just give us a bit of what that was like.
I was marketing some books yesterday called Magnificent Desolation, and I explained a lot of these long and broad. You don't want to get me involved in the feelings along the whole flight path down to the surface of the moon. We'll never get out of here. We felt like we had a job to do. We were looking at the checklist, Mike and Neil and I, and we were doing things as it unfolded, marveling at what it was. But it wasn't the first time. Gene and Tom had done these things on Apollo 9. They had feelings too. They just weren't going to land on the moon. But we, instead of stopping at 50,000 feet or 47,000 feet, we kept going. We lit the engine, and we opened the door to the future of exploration by touching down on another object. Were we emotionally involved in that? No, we were trying to make a successful landing. And when we touched down, and I said, contact light, we looked at each other and kind of briefly congratulated each other. But if something was wrong, we had to abort quickly or wait for 2 hours. You're not worrying. you're not fearful. Those are clouding emotions that cloud performance. Performance requires an alert mind looking to the future. That's what we were doing.
Having been there, emotion is involved. The adrenaline is pumping. Everything Buzz said is right, but there's something else happening that you don't have total control of that you got to accept at the time. Because when we landed on 17, the Earth wasn't up here. It was out the front window the whole time, all the way down to the surface. And if that isn't emotional, then nothing in the world is.
Okay, thank you. We want to remind you, please don't use flash photography. And we'll take a question down here.
Bob Asman, NBC News, retired. This is a question that you can all discuss. You've been talking about the International Space Station. What's to keep it from propelling itself to a higher orbit and perhaps making a real way station to Mars and beyond? In other words, use of the space station, it has rocket power. Can't we raise the orbit enough to make it, no?
There's an intense radiation at the South Atlantic anomaly, and that limits the upper altitude that you want the space station.
Back in the 1990s, we made a decision to put the International Space Station in a 51.6 degree inclination orbit. That limited our choices of what we can do with it as a way station to Mars from that time on. Originally, it was planned to go in what, 28.5 degree orbit. From that particular angle of inclination, it could have had some functionality as a way station and kick off to Mars. So we have to use it for a lot of other things now, but it's probably not going to be used to head us out to Mars.
Go on a little bit further. Again, in that year's study, we looked at that, but it really, it really wasn't a very good option. Okay.
Just one quick follow-up to that. We talked about everything except our national deficit, which is pretty steep and getting steeper by the day. What are the chances of NASA accomplishing even a minimal program in view of our national debt?
Well, every company in the United States has a capital budget, and they invest some of their capital into the future. And to me, that's what the space program is an investment in our future. As we all say, there was not one dime spent on the moon. It was all spent in America. And it created technologies that we all enjoy today. My BlackBerry has 65,000 times the memory of our Apollo computer. And so we all enjoy the benefits of the technologies that we developed. And so we should continue to invest some resources as our nation into the future, like every company does.
Do you know what that investment amounts to? For all of us here in this room who pay taxes, I hope we all do. We're in Washington, so I don't know. Less than 1 penny out of every dollar we send to the federal government in income taxes goes to space. Less than one of your tax dollar, 1 penny out of every one of your tax dollars goes to support space. You decide whether that's worth it.
Haven't we really experienced just recently the flexibility of promoting funds for doing various things? I mean, haven't we just had a great recession? Haven't we had all that stimulus money suddenly show up? Trillions. I couldn't imagine it. And so if a little bit of stimulus flowed towards space, which is a program of creativity that brings technology and knowledge back to the people of the earth, it's one part of a stimulus program that would really pay off with a lot of dividends.
The older that I get, the more I realize that what happens in the space program is less a function of what we can do or what the technology is, and it's a function of what you do right here in Washington, where those things don't seem to be a factor. It's the politics and the money, the expenditures going on here. It's up to you people right here in Washington to start doing something about that, to straighten out that kind of a thinking, to know the difference between an expenditure and an investment.
Let me bring up a point. I think, said this several times, that if Apollo, the internet had been there when Apollo went on, we'd have had a very difficult time of completing Apollo. Because after the tragic fire and other times, there were all different engineering people, engineers and scientists said we should do it this way or it's unsafe. But then we had good decision makers. We made the decisions, we went ahead. Today, when that happens, they go to their computer and send an email to the staffers on the Hill, the congressmen, to the press, to you people, and so it shows up all over. We didn't have that in Apollo. It would have been lots tougher in Apollo. Think about that.
Thank you. We'll take some more questions here at headquarters, but first let's take a couple questions from Ames Research Center.
Hi, this is Mike Swift with the San Jose Mercury News. People always remember the names of explorers that Dave Scott earlier mentioned, Cabot, Magellan, and Columbus. And 1,000 years from now, the only names of people now alive that people may know, maybe Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Jim Lovell, Gene Cernan. How do you guys feel about having that type of notoriety, and do you see it as a burden or an opportunity, and how have you dealt with it over the past 40 years?
I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I don't think that all of us, except for perhaps the 11 crew, because they did complete the project which started and are most well known, really have to worry about that celebrity status. I think most of us live our normal lives. We're not really bothered, except on, occasions like this that we are congenial to talk to the people. I can see the problems that the Apollo 11 crew can have, and where I kind of feel sorry for Neil every once in a while, because every time he goes someplace in public, he's usually recognized, and people want to ask questions, take pictures, get autographs, and things like that.
But they'll only have to do that for another 10 years or so.
I'd like to make an observation, maybe some validity to it. Somewhere around World War II, the expansion of human capabilities reached beyond the ability of one person to marshal his idea together and lead people to do something. It has taken a team to do things. None of us up here originated the idea of going to the moon and then organized the people to do that. But Lindbergh did, and Byrd did, and the other people that we look to as explorers that go down in history. Somebody said to Lewis and Clark, go do something. I don't know which one stepped on the Missouri River first, but it was Lewis and Clark doing something, and they carried out to the best of their ability without instructions from Washington, D.C. or anywhere else. The pioneers had real pioneering activities and experiences that they carried out, because they originated the idea. They marshaled the people behind them. Now we're going to send some people, the planet Earth is going to send some people one day to the surface of Mars. And if we think we're going to send them there for a year and a half and bring them back, and then send another group there for a year and a half and bring them back, I'll tell you what Washington will do. They will find another way to spend that money, unless we have declared that our objective is an increasing permanence, a settlement. The pioneers, the pilgrims on the Mayflower, did not come over and hang around Plymouth Rock looking for the way back home again. Let's start thinking of exploration as it really is, and are we up to it? I don't think there's any point in sending human beings to the surface of the moon and having them spend the rest of their career there, but I am entertaining that idea that willingness until we have the technology that can afford to send people there and bring them back. I asked Dr. Kraft, Chris Kraft, up at MIT, I said, look, when I look at mission planning and what it takes to get somebody to Mars and what it takes to get somebody back, I think the mission that sends people there and brings them back is 4 times as expensive as if we just take them there and then supply them. He said, no, I think it's 10 times. So let's look at what investment we are thinking about. We're not thinking about just going across the Atlantic and coming back. We are thinking of the purposes of which we should construct a pathway for humans to Mars. Steve Squires does a wonderful job with Spirit and Opportunity, and they're alive for over 5 years. Other people have estimated that if we had a human being on Phobos, the moon of Mars, directly controlling those robots at a safe position, not on the surface where they have to land and they have to lift off again, we could have done the job of Spirit and Opportunity in 4 or 5 months instead of years. So just think of what the speed of light means when we are dealing with the moon or dealing with the Mars.
Can I get back to that question real quick? It may surprise you, but everyone on this stage puts their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do, okay? But a friend of mine once told me, that's fine, but other people don't look at you the same way you look at yourself, which is good. Other people look at these guys differently than they look at themselves. They all went to the moon, they all went to space, they all did something. That comes with a tremendous opportunity, because there isn't anyone here who doesn't realize that they can get your attention. That's why you're here. They get young people's attention. If they get people listening to them, so we got to watch what we say, and we got to make sure we believe ourselves in what we say. But it comes with an awesome responsibility. When we got assigned to a crew and assigned to a flight, no one said you're going to get your name in a history book, and that was not part of the equation. It just happened that way. But there is a tremendous responsibility that goes with what you asked about, because you do look at us differently than we look at ourselves, which is the way it should be. We're just like you. We just happen to be the luckiest group of people in the entire history of the modern world to have done something, to live our dreams, to go somewhere where no man has ever gone before. And the responsibility is to give that back in some way or another, or provide, as Buzz and the guys are talking about, the opportunities for those who follow in our footsteps to once again see what has never been seen before.
Thank you. We'll take one more question from Ames.
Hi, Ron Luty with the San Francisco Business Times. You guys talked about a less than 1 cent per tax dollar commitment to NASA right now. Is there more of a public-private solution needed to get to Mars?
What kind of position?
Public-private. I think that having commercial operations to develop cargo carrying and the like, maybe the only solution we got with the gap coming up, maybe the only solution we have for resupplying with American technology, the International Space Station. But I think that when it comes to commercial manned operations, I think that the companies out there today really have not even begun to scratch the surface, and it'll be a long time before they will match the same kind of emphasis, technology, safety requirements, and what have you that we enjoyed at NASA. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, thank you. We'll now take a question, one more question from field centers. We have one from Langley, and then we'll come back here to headquarters.
Hi, this is Mike Bruce from the Virginian Pilot newspaper. My question is, what should NASA's priorities be once we land on Mars? Are there studies or experiments that you feel we should be conducting, or setting up tourism bases, whatever? What are some of the priorities once we land on Mars?
Well, I think we ought to wait till the Augustine Commission completes its recommendations there in August. Come up with a series of options, and that would be a better time. Everybody has their own idea now. I think all of us kind of agree eventually to Mars. In the what degree could vary, but let's wait to see what Augustine, he's got some good people, General Les Lyles and other people there on board that come up. Let's wait and see and have this discussion in August. We got a goal we need to explore, but let's look at the options.
Tom, he's asking what we think we should be doing on Mars. We should wait until Augustine Commission says we're going to go there? And
No,
then we
Augustine,
should.
I think, Buzz, what Augustine will obviously say that this is some of their options.
Yeah.
And then the management, I think all of us are pretty much convinced that Mars is a goal we should shoot for, to explore, to go there. How we go there may have some different approaches. And I'm sure he'll recommend that as some of the options. But that was his charter from the White House, was to come up, review all this, and also his charter got expanded, both the Constellation Program review and exploration and the station. So
there's no life on the moon.
Nope.
Okay. We don't know about Mars.
Right.
Okay. There may be life on Mars. If there is, it's for damn sure we ought to go there and look at it.
Right on.
Okay. When we get there and we don't find any life on Mars, from that point on, there will be life on Mars, because we'll bring it there, whether it's germs and leftover urine bags or whatever it is.
There's already that in that lunar module ascent stage Snoopy that's going around in a heliocentric orbit right now. You can't ever tell what's going to evolve out of that one.
Answer your question, what we're going to do when we go, maybe that's where we're going to go, because we don't know yet. That's human exploration. That's curiosity is the essence of human existence. Let's go and find out what we need to do. Things spirit and opportunity can't tell us. Put the human brain, the human mind, the intellect on Mars, and then we can answer that question.
Okay, thank you. We have a question over in front here.
I'm Allison Smith from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The work that you did inspired more than a generation, and some of it we see around the International Space Station. You talked, Mr. Cernan, about the responsibility of that. But Mr. Lovell, you also talked about the International Space Station as almost being a white elephant. I'm curious to know what you see in the space program today that can be an inspiration for the next generation.
Well, I mentioned it as a white elephant, and I was doing some of the initial studies of the space station when I was still with NASA. And I'm saying that as of to now, the people up there are merely maintaining that station and building it up. And we have about a 3 or 5 year period where we will not have the orbiters to complete the work that we're doing there. So we have a problem with the space station. I want to see the space station have a return on our investment. And I think it can be. It can look back at the Earth and learn more about the Earth. It can be a waypoint. It can be, we can look at other things that the space station can use, things that we haven't thought about yet. So when I say it's a white elephant, it has been a white elephant. We've been building it up. We have not gotten really any substantial experimentation from it. We've used that as a waypoint sometimes. We've done a lot more with the Hubble Space Telescope, which I think was one of the greatest triumphs of the space program.
So do you see inspiration in what you see today?
I see inspiration to use it, yes. It's up there. What it does that is important is perhaps more political in the fact that we have a consortium of countries now that can work at the space station. We have gotten Japan and Germany of the European space agencies, Russia. They're all working together. And some aspect, the intercourse of these countries working together has a method of learning more about the countries themselves, and we're using space as an item to do that. In that respect, the space station, I think, has some merit to it. As a scientific tool, I think that the space station has a long way to go.
Let me bring up one point here. And I want to follow on what my classmates from Naval Academy and colleague has to say. And I'll take maybe a slightly different approach since I chair the Independent Oversight Committee for the International Space Station for NASA's volunteer work. Right now is the first time we finally have a 6-person crew up there. And the Russians are committed over the next 18 months to have 17 launches. That's Progresses and Soyuzes. Now, and also we have an ATV coming up from the European Space Agency, and we have the Japanese HTV coming up that will carry heavier payloads up. Are they will be as good as the shuttle? No, but there'll be a lot more of them. So let's see. But they added one shuttle flight that's very, very significant called the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer, developed by MIT, and this will be placed on 7 different locations, 7, on the station to look out into deep space, to look and determine potentials of black matter and the formation of the universe.
In response to your question, and also a little bit in response to my friend Jim here, if the International Space Station has some limited functionality going forward, other than just a laboratory, it's because of the decision that was made to put it in a 51.6 degree inclination orbit. That decision was pure, simply politics. It was a decision made to bring the Russians in. When the Russians came in, that was the only way that they could really take part in that space station. So that was a political decision. Once more, half of it at least comes back here to Washington, D.C. And when it comes to the gap, the biggest problem that we have going forward, because all of these other timelines that you hear downstream, they're all artificial timelines. There's nothing magic about 2015 getting back up, or 2016, or the moon by 2020. There's only one real deadline. That deadline is when they quit flying the International Space Station. I happen to believe that that is the biggest mistake we've made in a long, long time, but it's also kind of fruitless to try to get it going. People have been convinced, the congressmen especially, to quit funding the International Space Station. Big mistake.
Let me bring up again, this Oversight Committee. Walt said it was political. In one way, the main thing was we needed a safety return, a crew escape vehicle, in case something would happen to the shuttle, which it did, on Columbia, and as a result of what happened there on Challenger. And the only reliable little thing that could get you back a spacecraft, a capsule, was a Soyuz. That's the main reason.
Well,
That was our mistake. We canceled the crew return vehicle.
Let me be cruelly honest. When Jim said it's a white elephant compared to not what we did, what America did during Apollo. We have today the brightest young men and women in the space program. They would put us to shame. Let me tell you, they're more educated, they're qualified, they've done everything there is to do, and they've done it in a shorter period of time. We kicked the door open and threw out a plum, and they reeled in a lemon. That's the crews. Those are the guys and gals I expected to take us back to the moon and onto Mars. The cruelty, the actual fact of life is, everybody knows who John Glenn is, Al Shepard, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Jim Lovell. Everybody knows who those guys are. I defy almost everyone in this room to name 1 or 2 or 3 members on a space station today. Certainly a high school kid cannot, but certainly that high school kid knows who Jim Lovell and Neil Armstrong is, or are. And that's the difference. We need to re-inspire that kind of spirit in the minds and hearts, the passion of these kids, to once again do something unique. Space shuttle goes up, maybe someone shows it on television, maybe they don't. It's over. No kids get out of school to watch someone walk on the moon. Go on the space station, Tom, and all deference to you. Now, I don't even know what the spectrometer is, okay? I don't know what it's going to tell me. I don't know. The most interesting thing in the last 25 years is the mystery of what this Hubble telescope is showing us. Are we looking through time or distance or what? Beyond that, unfortunately, science is dull.
Gene, no Buck Rogers, no Bucks.
I'll probably be chewed up for that one, but it's a fact.
Thank you. Let's remember to wait for the microphone, and we have a question down here in the front.
Elizabeth Howell, Apollo@40.com. This question is for all of you gentlemen. Can you say what aspect of the Apollo program has been overlooked these last 40 years?
Has been overlooked?
Has been overlooked, yes.
The chance of dangerous adventure. When Buzz landed on the moon, one of the things they carried with them was microfilm messages. It wasn't microfilm, but it was messages from the leaders of all the free nations.
72 leaders left messages on the moon.
And one of them was from Prime Minister Jack Gorton of Australia at the time. And I will never forget what his message had to say. It's the last sentence that's important. He says, "May the high courage and technical genius which made this achievement possible be so used in the future that mankind will live in a world in which peace, self-expression," and this is the one, "and the chance of dangerous adventure are available to all." We have allowed our country to turn into a risk-averse society. It's reflected in NASA. It's reflected in every aspect of what we do today. You know, the reason they had such a huge debate about the Apollo, the fourth servicing mission to Hubble, was because they couldn't get from the Hubble's orbit to the International Space Station to save the lives if there was some kind of a problem. Now, prior to that time, we had put 88 missions at the same or similar orbits to the Hubble Space Telescope. And we never once gave a thought to the fact that we had to have some safe haven to go to for 30 days so they could send somebody back. We need to get back to the point where we are no longer a risk-averse society and that we recognize that there are some things in life worth taking a chance for. There are things worth risking your life for.
This is Bob Nance. I was lunar module flight controller doing all the Apollo missions. And guys, you know, back then, unfortunately, we're all older than most of the people in this room. Not you, Tom. But, you know, back then we were inspired. People were excited. I mean, people just couldn't wait to watch the TV to watch a space mission. I know in Apollo 13, Jim, you know, that was one of the things that suddenly that nobody wanted to watch the flight, and then all of a sudden it was all the talk. How do we inspire our young people, the people that go into science? I mean, are we going to allow this country to get behind? We were in a space race. Everything was exciting. How do we get that spirit back into America?
Well, we try to do that. I think most of us are involved in civic opportunities to inspire young people, because in most of the various museums and planetariums and things that we all share to do that type of work, it's really an educational for the young people to hopefully get an inspiration. So we're sort of a catalyst for the people that say, hey, I want to follow through, because I can recall now when we meet people who are in their 40s, 45 or 50s, they said, hey, I was just 10 years old when you made that flight. But now I'm an engineer or a technician or a scientist, and that was sort of the inspiration that got me started along that field. And that's really what our job is these days. You're looking at a lot of old people now, but our main mission now is to inspire the young people, and that's what we try to do. The only way we can get inspiration, you know, where everybody is glued to their TV sets, it's either to have an accident like Apollo 13 or really get going on a mission that inspires everybody. Because when we went to the moon, you know, people have been thinking about going to the moon for hundreds of years. And suddenly, towards the middle of last century, that reality, or became a reality. Hey, I think we can really do it. And so, you know, every time someone walked outside and saw the moon, that was the goal that we were all striving for at the time. It's kind of hard to repeat that. And of course, we also had a contest with the great Soviet Union at the time, which also inspired all of us for a challenge. That challenge now is not there any longer. So it's hard to recreate. And that's why I think some of us are you know, saying, hey, Mars is a good thing to do, because it is the other moon that we now have conquered. And so that's the reason why we need the inspiration.
I'd like to second Jim's comments and also say it's up to you in the media and history in the press to record and sustain the legacy. We're going to be around for a few more years, but to inspire the kids, I think you have to continue this story and understand why Apollo happened, how it happened, and all the people who contributed to it to make it happen, which stimulated the young people. And I think it's the legacy of Apollo that has to go on until we get back to something comparable.
And that's difficult because it's good news, not bad news.
Good point, Buzz.
How about the fact that in about 2 years, we're going to be sitting like this to the Soviet Union and China say, by the way, can you take us back to our space station? That might inspire somebody.
Let's not wait until then.
I'm with you,
Know
Buzz.
it now.
I'm with you, Buzz.
Actually, Gene's got a good point. As you probably know, the propulsion capability on the space station is controlled by Russia. And that's the country that keeps it up and keeps it moving. So we got to play those cards pretty carefully.
ATV can do that.
Once in a while.
HTV.
Once in a while.
Have you detected the fact that we don't have a consensus on almost anything?
It was that way from the beginning.
I was going to say, that's the way it was in the 1960s as well.
Thank you.
We
We have
work
time.
together as a team to carry out the goal.
Yeah.
Let me add to that. Let me add what Walt said. Apollo 13, Apollo 11, Apollo 13, the two greatest examples. We competed with each other tooth and nail, head to head, to get that seat on that spacecraft to get that flight. But come Apollo 11, we were all hitched to the same wagon, pulled in the same direction. Came Apollo 13, we were all hitched to the same wagon, and you know this well, and we threw away the badges, and we were all headed in the same direction. And that's just the, I guess, the spirit. That's one of the legacies of the space program itself. We can do those things when we need to do them.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions, and we're going to have to wrap. We have one up here in the front.
Gentlemen, before I ask my question, I'd just like to say it's a distinct honor, pleasure, and privilege to be with true American heroes, especially on this day. And I thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you.
My question relates a little bit to jobs, a little bit more to politics. In the 60s, you saw a rise in technology that created jobs. We just saw a multi-gazillion-dollar stimulus package. If we were all, as your emissaries, going to our local Congress people, members of Congress, senators, and saying, you got to put up a program to Mars. You know why? Because it's going to create jobs. Not just to the MIT PhDs, but to the people with high school diplomas, technical school diplomas, and things like that. What kind of jobs can we tell them that a mission to Mars is going to create for their constituents, so they'll put a check mark in?
I don't believe you go out and try to, quote, create jobs. If you make the right investment, the jobs it comes from the bottom up. What you have to do, for example, in our country today, if you would make things better for small businesses especially, and let the small businesses create the jobs, not phony jobs. If you make the investment and their business starts growing and you allow the competition, they will create the jobs. It's happened throughout our history. Why are we throwing that away now?
Like I said earlier, that capital investment that all companies make, is we make in our space program, will create the jobs. The contractors will say, I need to hire you, and you, and it can be from a janitor to the lead engineer. And so everybody will benefit. And so those 400, like in Apollo, 400,000 people, the ancillary benefit from all of that with the suppliers and this and that and the other, and the little moms and pops and McDonald's and all of that, they benefited from all of that. The money was returned over and over and over again, and so those are the kind of lasting jobs that we create, and then that technology, somebody's going to have a bright idea, well, I'm going to make a camera phone, or I'm going to do something, and taking that technology, and we can't even dream of some of the things that investment is going to provide for us in the future.
And by far, the majority of those jobs were in the private sector, not in government. By far the majority. And a tribute to American industry, to American ingenuity, is that everyone who went to the moon came home.
In the 1970s, we made a decision after going to the moon to build a reusable craft. Two parts of it were going to land on a runway, but we kind of mucked up that one. And a couple of parts land in the salt water and are towed back. The other part lands on a runway. I think that was a good decision. And we've been 28 years now, and once the spacecraft returns and becomes subsonic, we have maneuvered to a precision landing on a runway. Do you want to see the next 20 years back in the ocean like Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo? The COTS program is going to take cargo up and cargo down, then they're going to take people up and people down. I can guarantee you that it's going to be the cheapest way possible. Just like Mercury was the cheapest way possible, and Gemini and Apollo. You're going to see our astronauts in the future, after we retire the orbiter, landing in the ocean or in a desert. Is that what you want to see? It's the private sector is going to make the investment in partnership with NASA. We have studied orbital space planes. We've studied Hermes on an Ariane, a Hope vehicle on a Japanese H-2 rocket. The Indians would love to leapfrog ahead of the Chinese, who are committed to a Shenzhou like a Soyuz. There's an opportunity for commercial, international space craft that lands on a runway that follows the pattern of the shuttle, but it only takes 6 or 8 people. That's the opening of adventure travel into orbit. We're going to wait for Richard Branson to do that? Or are we going to do that in this country?
You need private investors.
Absolutely, you
to do
do.
that. We're all part of a government program, and I agree with you that the privatization of space will occur, but it's only when the people who are involved in that see a return on their investment. And we have privatization in communication satellites, weather satellites, GPS, and all that is well done. But until we get a privatization of transportation to the space station and back again, and we see that those people who are involved and invested in it see a return, you're not going to get it.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, so we are not going to be able to take any more questions. That will conclude today's news conference on the Apollo 40th anniversary. For more information on Apollo 40th events, please visit www.nasa.gov/Apollo 40. Thank you.
Don't tell. Don't